Hello and welcome everyone. I'm C.S.Gilmore, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Soul Drinkers Omnibus 2. So, I made a few mistakes with the last video. I believe I had mentioned how they had some recruitment and everything, and then things went wrong and they had another, rebellion type issue, another chapter war type deal. And I kind of jumped the gun on that. I believe they had the recruitment in the last area, but this is where it starts off where they have the whole chapter war because of it. And it's probably a good thing I kind of forgot about where it was exactly because there were some details I also forgot to bring up about why they had a rebellion so quickly after gaining new recruits. And a big part of that was they were trying to be different than the Imperium. And when they got new recruits and implanted the gene seed and everything, most Space Marine chapters undergo hypno training and various other things that help them to become what they are, the Space Marines, and also to kind of ingrain loyalty to the chapter and to the Imperium and things like that. And they were trying to be different than the Imperium, so they kind of skipped some of the hypno trainings and hypno indoctrination that would normally be involved in creating new recruits. So these new recruits were a little more willing to just say bye to the Imperium, and also we care about the old chapter. Things like that. A lot of stuff happens in these upcoming books. There's fights with Necrons. I believe they end up working with an Inquisitor. I can't remember if it was the same one from before, but I think it was a different one. So many Inquisitors. Anyway, but they end up working with the Inquisitor a bit. They end up working with other Space Marine chapters and having fights with other Space Marine chapters. I believe the Red Sabers, I think, have a bit of an issue with them for I forget what reason. They also start getting hints of there may be issues of other sorts in the chapter. The one Inquisitor, for example, that ends up kind of working with them a bit, has discovered, even though he couldn't get some info because some other Inquisitor may have, destroyed all the Imperial records of them, as I mentioned before. He was still able to hunt down old rumors and things throughout the galaxy, and there's mentions of a black chalice that he believes is results of someone in the Soul Drinkers doing things they aren't supposed to, and various stories of someone who very much fits the description of a Soul Drinker doing all this other stuff and doing things out in this area of the galaxy, and they're like, we have no records of anyone ever of the chapter ever even doing stuff out in this area of the galaxy. Because the chapter, of course, has their own records, which they've been keeping. I also forgot to mention that I forget when exactly. I think it was in that first omnibus. At some point, they end up moving out of what they had shipwise into a Space Hulk and retrofitting that and basically taking over Space Hulk as their new headquarters and their main ship of transport. So that's how they were getting around for a while, is a Space Hulk. And there's all sorts of issues involving fuel for it, primarily as a result of the rebellion of the new recruits. They had to I think it was their tech marine who was not in the rebellion, helped prevent them from the new recruits from stealing their ride by sabotaging the reactors, and then they had all sorts of other problems. And yeah, fuel is a thing, and in Warhammer, and it's hard to get sometimes, especially when you can't just go into an Imperial port and say, "Hey, fill it up." And I don't know. There's so many things that happened. You also get throughout these books, the chaplain has been building up a following in the faction in the chapter. He's been building more and more of a following, and I got the name of the book that they follow inside the Codex. It was and I just lost it in my brain. I think it was the Catechism's Marshal or something along those lines. What was it? Something along those lines. And this was written by, I want to say the guy's name was Dionysius or something like that. It was a lot of vowels in there. And he was the old hero of the chapter that wrote this book that they follow. And well, they get some areas in here where like we get some background on him and some of his writings, and there's suggestions that the uh, the Soul Drinkers like leaving the Imperium and going renegade was kind of destined to happen because they follow his writings, and his writings kind of, if you follow them to their conclusion, kind of suggest he has a thing about referring to the imperial citizens as cattle that need to be herded, and we are the shepherds. But then, like, how can we follow orders from Terra if we're the shepherds and not the cattle also, and things like that? Yeah, all sorts of fun conclusions and things. And he's like, oh yes. What else should I cover here? I am skipping a ton. This book is huge, by the way. Neither of the omnibuses are particularly small. The other one wasn't small either. And I've read larger omnibuses. I think this one's in the 700-page range, but it's got pretty small text, so it's got a lot in here. And I believe this one has how many books in it? It has the rest of the series. Chapter War, Hellforged, Dionysus, and Phalanx. And the names kind of give you some hints as to what's going on. Chapter War is the Chapter War with the recruits rebelling. Hellforged, I don't quite remember that one. I think that involved, I want to say that involved the Necrons. Because I know they end up working with someone, with a world trying to fight the Necrons and deal with things there. And yeah, they fight, they kind of deal with the Necron Lord and cause some things to collapse. All sorts of fun. Bad things happen all around. At some point, the chaplain kind of goes off on his own, and to check on some chapter relics he believed, or some chapter records he believed was stored somewhere. I forget if he even tells him that's what he was doing. He goes to check on something anyway. And, yeah. Turns out the chaplaincy and the Soul Drinkers has been continuing the work of Dionysius with the Catechism's Marshal. They've been continuing that, leading the chapter to this conclusion. And they also get some other interesting things that happen throughout the story. At one point in the stories, in the books, they find a dreadnought. And it's very interesting because the chapter has no records of ever having dreadnoughts. And you probably all know what I'm talking about here, but like when a Space Marine gets critically injured, but isn't quite dead yet, sometimes, especially if they're like an honored battle brother or something, did something heroic, they get encased in a sarcophagus, which then basically gets attached to robotic limbs and everything, and they become a giant hulking robot monstrosity that gets mostly put in a coma, asleep for most of the time, and then woken up when it's time to fight. Anyway, they find one. Guess who's locked inside? Guess who is this dreadnought? The writer of their sacred book himself. And yeah, so all sorts of fun stuff goes on. I think it's been a really long time since I read these omnibuses, so please bear with me when I do apologize for anything I got wrong with like the last video, and if I get anything wrong with this one. But as I recall, these books had a few odd inconsistencies in the general storyline, like who could use the spear, which I believe was that chapter relic we mentioned that started the whole mess. I believe we got the name for that. It was the Soul Spear. And yeah, I gotta stop saying no. I have a problem with that. Lots of stuff goes on. Eventually, I'm gonna jump towards the end here. Now, the Phalanx. Some of you might know this as the Imperial Fists chapter main base. It's a ginormous space station type thing, kind of on the par with, say, a Blackstone Fortress level of huge and ridiculousness. In fact, if I remember seeing like pictures of the things, they were kind of depicted very similarly. I don't think it was a Blackstone Fortress, but it was very similar in design and build and size. Cats, don't knock stuff down. Troublemakers. But anyway, the Soul Drinkers eventually get, after lots of fights, they get various injuries, struggles throughout. They build up over the books. Serpedon like loses one of his legs. He's got a few extras to spare, but he gets a robotic one at one point in the storyline. He still gets really beat up, nearly dies. I believe I forget I think he gets into a fight with one of the Imperial Fist guys. Was it the Chapter Master? Shoot, can't remember. Long story short, they get captured by the Imperial Fists and taken to the Phalanx to stand trial for all their crimes and junk. They become prisoners there, including their recovered prophet dreadnought writer of the books type dude. And here we get a whole lot of other junk that goes down. I forget how it all exactly happens, but the dreadnought might open up a warp portal inside the Phalanx. And because this has all been a part of the plan that this dude started, I want to say over 1,000 years ago, stupid times, long ago, in the old chapter times. This guy's been around a while. And this has all been part of the plan. Because he is a servant of Zeech, working with that one greater demon that Serpedon stabbed and sent back to the warp after he gained the Soul Spear from back in the beginning of this whole mess. And I looked up the name of those greater demons. It was the Changer of Ways. The greater demon was the Changer of Ways. But demons don't die when you kill them. Generally, they go back to the warp. So, guess who also shows up again? Mr. Changer of Ways. He shows up as well. And there's demons pouring into the Phalanx. And the Imperial Fists are, fighting that off, and long as anyone else that's there that doesn't want to be demon food and is actually loyalist. And I forget how it all plays out. The Soul Drinkers end up getting loose, or let loose. I think it was they break loose. And, well, a few of them are left anyway. After all these things happen, the chapter's gotten pretty small. There aren't a whole lot of them left. But they get out of... Cats, for the love of Pete, quit knocking everything down. I have to go see if you knocked anything important over there. My wife's poor plants. Can't catch a break. So, anyway. Soul Drinkers get loose. They're freeing the Phalanx as well. The ones that are loyalists. Well, renegade. Not really loyalists, but not really... They definitely don't worship chaos. Except because most of the ones that have gone to chaos have been killed over the course of these books. Except for, of course, Mr. Dreadnought, been around since started this whole thing. He's around, causing more trouble, summoning demons, that sort of thing. Serpedon works with rallies the Soul Drinkers, and basically they work out okay, cool, you may not like us with like the Imperial Fists and others. You may not like us. We may not agree on a lot of things. We may think the Imperium's trash. You may be loyalist. But you know what? We can all agree that chaos is really bad, and this is kind of our fault, so we're going to help fix it. If you'll let us. And they basically get the chance, and this is their redemption of sorts. They go and get everyone together they can and charge and fight their way through the Phalanx, through hordes of waves of demons pouring out of the warp in order to have a big showdown with their great ancestor dude and that Stranger of Ways again and everything. And they have a massive fight, kicking the demons out of the phalanx. And I forget the entire details. If they end up going, like the remainder of them end up like going into the warp portal to try to hunt them, like actually go into the warp portal to fight the demons and hunt down their people that have gone rogue, or whether it was that they all, or whether it was slightly different. I know that it doesn't end well for the chapter anyway. A lot of them die, if not all of them, and well, if you end up in the warp, you're probably dead anyway. So, but lots of fighting. Demons get kicked out. The chapter gets their redemption, and that's a big deal. And that's why when the Primaris come along later on in the storyline in the history of 40k, the Soul Drinkers are actually one of the chapters that gets refounded. Though I hope they skip the whole bringing back the Catechisms Marshal and the whole let's go rogue and join chaos possibly and or other issues that was kind of ingrained in the original chapter due to that one dude. I haven't heard any recent Soul Drinkers lore, so I don't know where they're going with that. If it's just, hey, we're a chapter. Or what? Or if the new Soul Drinkers still have their weird mutation that lets them basically live people's lives by eating their brains. That could be interesting. Anyway, hopefully we don't do Chaos Circle Boogaloo 3.0 or whatever. Trying to think what else to do here. Is there anything else I really needed to mention about these books? I already mentioned, I believe there was a lot of mysteries involved, and I think they're on the list of things that'll never get answered. Like, are the Soul Drinkers actually Imperial Fist's descendants? Are they actually a breakoff chapter from that? The descendants of Dorn, or are they actually someone else's? Are they someone else's kids who've been adopted in at some point, say due to a heresy that happened some 10 millennia ago? Or perhaps due to even before that, when 2 Primarchs got erased from the records. Because, and along with their chapters, because of reasons that we aren't getting into ever, probably. Maybe. Lots of stuff. Because, yeah, the Soul Spear had some weird kinks in it. One of them being that I believe only Soul Drinkers or descendants of Dorn, I believe was the rule, could use it. And if I remember right, the Imperial Fists couldn't use it. Or was it that they could and... no. Someone, I believe at one point, someone used it that wasn't supposed to be able to. Or someone who wasn't able to use it who was supposed to be able to. There was a lot that happened in these books, and I am going off of a lot of memory and a quick review because I don't have time to read this. It's a lot. Behold, the text is very small, though privacy worse. But I've also seen a lot bigger text-wise that would make it a lot easier to fit less in more. Something I haven't really touched on properly with all this. The characters, there's a lot of characters I've not even mentioned. There's a lot of characters I skipped over. Each of them has their own characteristics and like their own individuality. It is pretty well written. You get a lot of interactions between various factions in these stories. Like I mentioned, there's actually an Inquisitor that kind of helps them a bit. Or at least isn't willing to just say, hey, you're all dead. but there's something bad going on here that seems to be tied to your chapter, and I want to get to the end of it, get to the bottom of all that. You get the Imperial Fists. We had the Crimson Fists that were in the previous omnibus, and who were pretty ticked off at them as well because of standard game stolenness, I recall. We had those of them that went mutation. Oh, that's something I completely forgot to mention last time. Talos, or whatever, the guy with the sword blade arms that who had super regeneration. I mentioned he went rogue and they had to fight him, and I believe they actually killed him after they found him again and realized he was off the deep end and gone corn. Or crazy, yeah. I forgot to mention something cool about that too. His mutations progressed further beyond just him having heavier regeneration and sword hands. By the time they had like their final battle with him and everything, he had like his skin had gone translucent, if I remember right, and so like a lot of bullets and weapons would just pass through him. Spit down the wrong tube. And yeah, his regeneration went off the charts. So killing him wasn't easy. I really skimmed over the whole fighting the Necrons thing because yeah, they end up on a place. I believe that was one of the areas they were trying to get fuel or recruits from once again. They needed supplies, and they were, they also were helping out. We'll help you, you help us, type of deal. Trades, evacuating a planet. If I remember, it was also part of the plan because Necrons are a problem and they're really hard to get rid of. Especially when you happen to be built on their tomb world. But yeah, the Necron fights were pretty good, as I remember it. There was a whole lot about fighting, like how the Necron soldiers are kind of just, endlessly coming, and they kept rebuilding and reconstructing and coming some more. The humans who were fighting them called them the Undying because they wouldn't stay dead. And I believe I think there was this story where they actually bought some time. The Soul Drinkers bought some time for the humans in themselves by literally causing a landslide to collapse on top of the Necron army and block off a main route and bury them, essentially. It doesn't stop them nearly as well as you might think, though, because the Necrons have these little things called scarabs. And they're a bug that tends to break down and reconstruct matter really quickly. And so you you buried my army. Good thing they don't need air, food, water, anything like that. They can just be buried, and so they start digging themselves out. And throw some scarabs into the mix. Oh, look, the dirt's gone. They're loose again. There's a whole thing that involves them actually like going. I want to say they go into the tomb world and end up like wrecking some of the joints and either killing or at least temporarily killing the Necron Lord that was running things. If you can ever really kill those guys, they have a bad tendency of coming back. Other important things I forgot. There probably is a ton. I would rate this omnibus higher than the first omnibus. Maybe give it like an 8. Because once again, there were still some confusing parts. There was a lot of unanswered questions, things that were just hinted at, suggested, which is good. You're supposed to have it's good to have some mystery. I think there were a few inconsistencies in some of the lore that they had established previously, but I can't remember for sure. But it was an interesting story, and I liked where they went with some of it. The overall arc of it, all with them being loyalists, going renegade, having to work with loyalists at times, and kind of those that are a little more renegade as well, trying to survive, kind of slowly crumbling over time, or maybe not so slowly, but crumbling over time as they find that surviving without the Imperium is really hard, especially if you're not going to go full chaos and join them, so you still don't have a support system there either. And then their redemption at the end of saving the phalanx by putting an end to the demon portal issue in a massive conflict that kind of sees them finish themselves off. But hey, their chapter started, so it's good that they cleaned up their own mess, I guess. Probably would have been nice if they hadn't dragged so many people down with them, but yeah. Ultimately, I think a big message of the whole that Ben was trying to get through his writing here was also he really was trying to do a lot of inter-faction, inter-chapter, inter bits of the Imperium working with or against each other. It kind of show he was really trying to show the how fractured the Imperium really is, how tense they are. Like you got Inquisitors that don't always they're maybe doing stuff against other Inquisitors. You've got Inquisitors that are jumping the gun and making and driving Space Marine chapters into rebellion. You got others. You got the Mechanicus doing their own thing, and some of them being complete idiots about it and stealing the Soul Spear, which I think there was a bit about them doing that again. I forget exactly the details, but I know that they have to get the Soul Spear back at some point from something else, and I believe there was some more Mechanicus involved. They really gotta hold on to their chapter relics better. There's a lot that goes down, and it's a roller coaster of a ride. But I don't remember this second book frustrating me nearly as much as that first one, because I felt like that first one, the first omnibus, a lot of the stories felt like the characters just being dumb. The whole fall in the first place felt like it was because they were being dumb and just not working things out. This one might have had a few points, but so I don't remember them. And they also definitely get into a lot more of why the Soul Drinkers behave the way they do, why the Catechism's Marshal seems to point them in some bad directions. And gee, it's because it was written by a Chaos Worshipper. Go figure. That's a bad thing. Chaos Worshippers shouldn't write your books. Oh, wait. The entire Imperium follows the writings of Lorgar. What the whole God Emperor thing? Yeah, you probably shouldn't have Chaos write your books. This might be part. This could be part of the problem. Fun times. Anyway, other than probably all the angry comments I'm going to get in this video and the last video for screwing up some of the bits I misremembered, what did you guys all think about the books? Have you read them? Issues? Parts you liked? Comments below. In the meantime, I should wrap this up. Thanks everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like and subscribe to keep up with new releases. I think next time I'm going to try to tackle a book I remember a lot better, and maybe less omnibusy sized, so that it's a little easier for me to review quickly and jog my memory on what actually happened in them. Because I think that's part of the problem also with this video and the last one is omnibuses are actually a little trickier to talk about because you're actually talking about like 3 or 4 books and kind of compressing that a lot more. I'm kind of debating which ones I want to do next. Part of me wants to do The Lion Son of the Forest. That was an interesting one, but I think I might do Death Worlder first. I'm looking up on my shelf here of some of the books I've got pulled aside that I was thinking about. I might do Death Worlder first because that was a more recent read of mine, and that has to do with the Astra Militarum, the Catechins primarily, and it's got some good stuff in there that I really liked. So Lions of the Force also is really good. It involves the return of Lionel Johnson and some of the weird stuff involved with that and his new abilities. There's so many books to go over. So many books to cover. I have to dig through my giant boxes of... I've got like giant box in my closet of the books I've read. And then there's a few that I really want to talk about that I actually don't have on me anymore because I gave them over to a family member to read who's been getting into the Warhammer lore. I was like, read these ones, you'll like them. These ones should be moderately friendly for you. Caiaphas Cain, Hero of the Imperium, for example. I could go on for a while about Caiaphas Cain. It's great. I really want to talk about Caiaphas Cain at some point, but I have to figure out how in the world I'm going to talk about it because once again, talking about omnibuses. Oh boy, Caiaphas Cain's like nothing but omnibuses. Just about. There's like at least three of them. I think there's more now. Was there 4, 5? There's a lot. Kind of like Gaunt's Ghosts. There's so many omnibuses, and then side stories. I also want to talk about Gaunt's Ghost at some point, but that one's one I'm gonna have to probably break down real careful, especially since I don't want to do Gaunt's Ghost wrong, because Gaunt's Ghost is so good. Ooh, so many things I want to talk about, so little time, and I'm rambling now about what to do next. But I think I'm gonna try to take some smaller books for the next coming weeks, because just for the sake of be able to keep up with them myself and review them better and make sure I know what I'm talking about a little better than I do with these omnibuses. So, thanks everyone for watching. Have a great night. Bye.